Adobe Illustrator CS6 looks quite a bit different from earlier versions, so we'll begin this lesson with an overview of the workspace. The first thing you probably noticed is how much darker the interface is. This is a medium dark interface, and you could change it to either a darker still version or a slightly lighter version in your preferences. You can access Illustrator's preferences through the Edit menu, Preferences on a PC, or through the Illustrator menu, Illustrator Preferences on a Mac. And when you open it up, you just have to go to the User Interface category and choose a brightness option. So that's what super dark looks like. There's the medium dark, which is the default. You have medium light, which is probably what you're used to if you're working on earlier versions, and really light. So we'll stick with the medium dark, and also want to show you preferences. If you haven't been in here before, the preferences contain settings that you can customize for your own version of Illustrator. So for instance, in this general category, one of the options you can enable is to scale strokes and effects. I encourage you to go through each of these categories, looking at the different options and making any modifications to improve your workflow. When you're finished making your changes, click OK, and then you'll get back to the regular workspace. Now up at the top of the screen are just regular menu items. You have File to open and create new documents and save documents. Your Edit menu is where you'd go to copy, cut, paste, and so forth. There's Object menu where you can do things like group and ungroup your objects. You can create patterns and blends. We'll go into this menu in a little bit more detail later. The Type menu is for working with text. Select menu allows you to refine your selections. There are some special effects that we'll talk a little bit about. The View menu are things that you may want to do while you're viewing your artwork, and a lot of these are grayed out right now because we do not have a document open yet. Under your Window menu, these are access to all of your panels. There are several panels in the panel dock, and we'll get there in just a second, but you can certainly toggle panels open and close by selecting them through the Window menu. Now, if you ever see a drop-down menu that looks like this, that has little arrows at the bottom or the top, you could use your keyboard shortcut up-down arrow to scroll through the options shown here. So typically Actions is at the very top, like so, but you can up-down arrow to scroll to the bottom. There's also the Help menu, and to the right of that is a little link to Adobe Bridge. Now, Adobe Bridge is a program that comes with Illustrator when you buy Creative Suite, and it is a file management tool that's really wonderful because it allows you to search for and organize your content. You can preview every single Adobe file extension type and do batch renaming and all kinds of really cool things. So if you want to launch the bridge and then search for your files there, you can actually bring files back into Illustrator from the bridge. This next button deals with arranging multiple documents in your workspace. So when you have two or more documents open at the same time, you can choose this menu to select a particular arrangement of those files. To the right here, we have our Workspace Switcher menu. By default, we're on the Essentials menu, but you can choose any of these other options, and you can always toggle between them at any time while you're working. For that matter, if you find that you need to have your particular workspace set up in a very precise configuration, you can say New Workspace, give your workspace a name, and then that named workspace will appear in this listing, and you can toggle to that one as well. This next bar is for searching for help, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then off to the left is your toolbar. Your toolbar contains all of the tools that you'll be using to create and edit, manipulate the work that you create in Illustrator. Whenever you see a tool that has a little triangle on the bottom right side, that means that the tool has other tools hidden below it in the same tool family. So for instance, with our Type tool, if we click and hold on the Type tool itself, we see a flyout menu with all the different type options. In addition, this little button off to the side will allow you to tear off that menu as a floating panel, which you can position anywhere in your workspace. When you're finished working with the floating panel, just click the X button, and the panel will go back into the toolbar. Also notice when you hover your cursor over any of the tools, you'll see a letter in parentheses next to the tool. That letter can be used to toggle from tool to tool. And you don't have to memorize any of these, but knowing a few of them will certainly help you move around the toolbar. So for instance, you may want to remember V to move to the black arrow, your selection tool. And if there's other tools that you use quite often, such as the Type tool, you'll remember T, or the Brush tool, you'll remember B. And most of these use the keyboard shortcut that sort of matches logically the tool itself. Now, Pencil, N, maybe not so logical, but as you start to use them, you'll figure out which ones that would be good for you to memorize. The double arrow up here to the left is the Expand Collapse button for that panel. If you click on it once, you'll see an entire row of tools, and depending on your computer's monitor resolution, you may prefer to work with this single column layout. Or you may prefer just to leave it as a double column like this. I'm going to open a file now so that we can activate some of the other tools in the toolbar that are grayed out right now. One thing I really want to mention that's really important to working in Illustrator is this area right here. The top color represents your fill, and the bottom color represents your stroke. So for each object you create, you will be able to modify that object's stroke and fill. You don't have to have a fill color, and you don't have to have a stroke, but by default, each object would have those attributes. Now, lines typically only have strokes and no fills, but that's sort of the exception to most shapes or closed shapes that you'll be creating in the Illustrator workspace. You can toggle between the stroke and fill, the colors, just by clicking on this arrow, and you can reset the panel to the default fill and stroke by pressing this button here or clicking the D key on your keyboard. Below the color area is a color setting, a gradient setting, and a none setting. If you had an object and this first button is selected, that object would be filled with the selected color shown here. If you had an object with a gradient inside of it, the gradient would fill your object. And of course, if you wanted to have an object without a fill, you would click on this button. Now, all of these attributes were applied to the fill because the fill is actually active. If you wanted to make the stroke active, just click on it to activate it. Now that it's on top, you can modify the stroke's properties. Strokes can be filled with color, they can be filled with gradient and pattern, and they can also have a no-fill attribute. Below this are a series of buttons for drawing. The normal drawing mode is to draw where each time you create a new object, one is stacked on top of the next. But there's a new feature that allows you to draw behind an object, as well as a third option which allows you to select an object and draw inside of it. The last option at the bottom will allow you to change your screen mode. Notice that it has the F key associated with it. You can actually click on that button there to open up the panel to toggle between them, the different modes, or you can click your F key on the keyboard to toggle between them. You notice the third one has no toolbars, panels, or even menus, and you may occasionally want to see your workspace in this view. Just continue pressing the F key to toggle back to the start. Let's take a look over at the panel dock off on the right side of the screen over here. The panel dock is collapsed by default, but you can expand the panels by clicking on the double arrow button right here. Within the panel dock, you'll find panel groupings or panel groups. Within a panel group, you can click on a tab and drag it to reorder the panels within the grouping. You can also click and drag a panel and drag it outside of the panel dock. When you see a panel tab that has an up-down arrow next to the panel name, it's a toggle button that allows you to view a minimized, middle, and maximum view of the panel. Now, in this case, this panel has an extra area here that we can expand that shows us more of the panel's color picker area. To put a panel back into the panel dock, grab it by its tab and drop it into the panel dock. If you drop it above a panel grouping, you'll see a blue line. If you want to drag it into the same grouping, grab it and drag it next to the other panel's tabs. And when you see the blue line around the entire panel group, you can safely drop it back into that group. Each panel also has an options menu. Clicking on the options menu will reveal the options specific to that panel. As we work through the different lessons in this training, we'll talk about some of the options in the various panels. Panels themselves can be expanded and collapsed at any time. So if you wanted to see the Layers panel, just double-click to open it, double-click to close it. You should also be able to put your cursor between any two panel groupings, like so, to expand or collapse the panel. Not every panel will do that, so try putting your cursor between them before you drag. If you get the double-sided arrow, you can expand the panel in that way. While you're working, if you ever need help with a particular tool or panel or some question that you might have, there are a few places that you can go to get help with Adobe Illustrator. Start by going to the Help menu, and you'll see that there are two help options. This first option you can access through this menu or press F1 on your keyboard. This opens up Illustrator's Help and Tutorials website, where you can either search here or choose any of these options to find the answer that you're looking for. You can also access Illustrator Support Center by clicking on this button. And of course, if you have a specific question, you could always enter a keyword in the search bar at the top. For instance, if you wanted to know more about working with the pen, just enter pen, hit enter on your keyboard, and a website will open up showing you some options that might help you. Notice that this community help option is selected. If you don't want help from community support, you can click on support or adobe.com for specific answers to your search inquiry. Well, that's the Workspace overview. Now that you know where everything is, we can delve into creating some work.